We are here to navigate towards solutions to the overfishing scenario. Hello again, I'm Sofika Kosteniuk, the Director of Fisheries at OceanWise. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by our President and CEO, Lasse Gustafsson, who just popped out of a board meeting because he did not want to miss this conversation. This issue is very near and dear to him. Lasse has a long-standing and deep passion for ocean conservation. Prior to joining OceanWise in early 2019, Lasse was the executive director of Oceania Europe. He also held roles with World Wildlife Federation, WWF International, as their executive director of conservation, as well as their CEO of WWF in Sweden. He brings with him as well an academic background in international relations, human ecology, and developmental science. So I'm going to hand over the forum to Lasse now.
Thank you so much, Sofika. You would all think that Lasse Gustafsson is a funny name, but it isn't. It is one of the most common names in Sweden, where I'm born and raised. I'm a new Canadian. I've been here for 2.5 years. Good afternoon, and welcome to all of you, wherever you are. I'm talking to you from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations on the Pacific coast in Canada. Today is World Ocean Day, and we're going to talk about one of the biggest challenges facing the ocean: overfishing. I'd like to start with a bit of a context. I've been working on fishing for a long time, and back home they actually call me the cod father, because cod was for many years my focus. Cod is the most important fish in the Atlantic, in the Eastern Atlantic, which is my home waters. Everything has changed, and it's changed by a really provoking documentary called Seaspiracy. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you do. The opportunity that Seaspiracy, the documentary, has created for OceanWise and others who's been in the world of ocean conservation a long time is amazing. It's great storytelling by somebody who knew very little about the oceans when he started to record and started to do this film. When I watched it the first time, I got irritated by the shallow knowledge and the oversimplification. I'll give you an example. There's 126 questions asked in the film, but only one answer. And unfortunately, the wrong one. The answer is go vegan. We disagree with that. We think fish is great food, and we should make sure that people have access to a healthy meal of fish and seafood, maybe even every day. But Seaspiracy, the documentary, have provided us with an opportunity to take a big step in the right direction, because finally everybody's talking about our ocean challenges. As an ocean conservationist, you've been a minority even in the conservation groups. When I was responsible for WWF's global conservation budget, only 10% was directed towards ocean. Fixing overfishing isn't simple. But what Seaspiracy have created is the possibility to land one of the most important ingredients. As I said, it's not easy, but one thing is for sure: change is only possible when many people want change. And Seaspiracy has opened up the eyes for many people about all the many challenges that we are faced with in the ocean. So that's the context. Seaspiracy has been an amazing, thought-provoking documentary that is oversimplified and shallow, but with very strong emotional messages. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend you do. Put your critical glasses on and think about what you actually do think, and do a little bit of fact-checking. But it's an amazing, good thought provocation. Why am I so passionate about fishing? Of all the different environmental challenges that you can engage with, why fish? Why do I care about healthy fish stocks? You know, as Sofika said, I'm trained in international relations, so I have a people focus on conservation. And fish is good and healthy food. We will do ourselves and the planet a big favor if we replace some of our red meat with more sustainable fish dishes. And also, by rebuilding fish stocks, more people can eat fish and seafood. Almost 500 million people get their main meal from the ocean every day today. more than 800 million people go to bed hungry every day. So if we rebuild fish stocks, the number of meals that we can get out of the ocean every day can grow up to maybe 1 billion dishes per day. So you would be able to feed almost 1 billion people a day a healthy meal of fish or seafood. That's what's driving me. There are many other reasons to be engaged in the issue of overfishing, but that's what's been driving me. I care about people. I want people to have healthy food. I want them to have food, and rebuilding fish stocks would help feed the world. How is this related to Oceanwise's 10? We just decided on a 10-year conservation strategy last year, and overfishing is one of our 3 priorities. Climate change, pollution, and overfishing is our understanding of the major threats to the ocean. And why do we care about the ocean? Well, there are many reasons to care about the oceans. There's all sorts of reasons to care about the ocean. It's beautiful. It's a great place to have a holiday. It might provide you with your income. Great for transportation. But the top 3 benefits from ecosystem services provided from the ocean for free is oxygen. Almost 80% of the world's oxygen is produced by phytoplanktons microorganisms in the ocean. The ocean regulates our climate, and if it wasn't for the ocean, our climate change that we are experiencing already would be much worse. It's the most important carbon sink on the planet, no competition. And also, fish and seafood food is a really important ecosystem service that is provided by the ocean for free for us just to go out and pick. So that's why we care about fishing. It is a really important ecosystem service. We've had overfishing for about 40 years. We've been fishing for about 40,000 years. So we have an opportunity to get this right and relatively quick too, because unlike many other environmental challenges, we have most of the answers. And maybe most importantly, increased protection of the ocean is not limiting the productivity of the ocean. On the contrary, well-designed protected areas will increase the opportunity to catch more fish going forward. So that's our strategy. We'll dig into more of the details, but we care about the ocean because we are depending on it, because it's beautiful, because it's amazing in so many ways. Whatever reasons you care about the ocean, that's a good reason. I told you a little bit about why I care about the ocean, and we're interested to learn a little bit about why you care about the ocean. Finally, my last remarks before we dig deeper into the program is that if you want to help end overfishing, it really doesn't matter what you think or feel. What really matters is what you do. So we're launching this campaign today that we call a wave of change. There's a couple of months that we will try to drive home some serious change in the way we behave and the way that fishing is regulated. You can find a pledge, a list of things that you can do in the pledge on our website, and I'm sure somebody can put it in there when we start in the Q&As later. There's a link to a number of proposals of things that you can do, but I want to share the 3 of my favorites. 1, only eat Oceanwise recommended seafood. Forget everything else. 2, when you do eat Oceanwise labeled seafood, make sure you eat more of the restorative seafood like mussels, clams, oysters, scallops, and seaweed. Amazing food, great recipes. We did release a cookbook not so long ago. You can find it on our website. And then the 3rd thing that you could do, spread the word so we can multiply your impact. Talk to your friends and your family and ask them to help end overfishing too. So I am looking forward to a really exciting seminar, and I'm looking forward to learn from you guys. I'm looking forward to learn more about what we're doing here, and I'm handing it back to Sofika. Thank you so much.
That is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Lasse, for your meaningful and thought-provoking perspectives. Really, really appreciate that. It has set the stage beautifully for today's session. on overfishing. So if anyone has had Lassa pinned to the larger format, please feel free to unpin him now so that you can see the slide deck on your full screen. And I'm just going to dive right in. So as we know, the ocean covers a vast majority of the planet's surface, over 71%, in fact. It supports over 99% of all inhabitable space on our planet and contains some of the largest geological features, including the tallest mountain ranges and the deepest canyons. This space is absolutely vast. Yet one species, through their actions, has very deeply impacted the state and the health of our oceans. And unfortunately, that species is us. And it is our responsibility to turn the tide on the scenario that we've created. So this is a photo of my family in very happy times back in the 1970s. This is in Florida. At a time when I still had a six-pack. My brother is obviously angry at something, throwing coconuts, and my dad is on vacation. So we spent an incredible amount of time traveling throughout North America as I was growing up, spending most of our summers and holidays in and near the ocean. I spent hours every single day snorkeling, whether it was in Florida or Texas or Mexico, looking for seashells. We would body surf in the ocean waves and just kind of immerse ourselves in this incredible, incredible water ecosystem. And in fact, on this trip, I remember I was body surfing one day and I looked over and a shark was also surfing the waves next to me. It turned out that it was a lemon shark. And very sadly, that species is in a near threatened status today, even though at that time, I didn't spend much time at all thinking about the delicate balance in which the ocean exists. But just a few decades later, that species is now in a near threatened status. 40 years or so after that photo was taken, I found myself standing overlooking the floor of the nearly brand new Toyosu fish market in Tokyo. This place is enormous. It is one, if not the largest fish market on the planet. And I was at this moment in time staring down at several football fields worth of frozen tuna. This was at the end of the daily tuna auction around 7 o'clock in the morning. The tunas have their tails cut off so that the buyers can inspect the fatty content of the tuna. The fins are cut off. And I was stunned into silence. These torpedoes of the sea were just lying there like frozen little logs and getting moved around the warehouse floors on forklifts. So the sheer scale of this operation has sort of been burned into my memory bank. And I definitely was not new to ocean conservation and the fish world by this point in time. I had been working on sustainable seafood issues and ocean conservation issues for almost 20 years, but I had never had the experience of going to Japan until 2019. And this has really left an indelible mark on me. The oceans, as Lasse mentioned, really support life on this planet beyond providing essential food to almost 3 billion people, or important food sources for 3 billion people. Tens of millions of people directly rely on fisheries for their employment. And then in subsequent roles in processing, transportation, distribution, it's upwards of several 100 million jobs on the planet. Almost a third of the global population, or actually more than a third, 2.8 billion people live in coastal communities. Their lives are deeply intertwined with the health of the ocean. And as Lasse mentioned, the ocean is our greatest source of atmospheric oxygen. Without the ocean's ability to produce this oxygen, our very survival is threatened. So overfishing is one of the greatest threats to the health of the world's oceans today. It is a problem that humans have created. It is a problem that we can navigate out of. The solutions are there, and we just need to raise enough awareness, raise enough inspiration, and to create that action to make changes occur very rapidly. We do not have a lot of time to waste. So what is overfishing? It's simply defined as removing too many fish from the sea at a given point in time so that the breeding population cannot adequately recover. And that's it. As a result of prolonged overfishing, around a third of the world's fish stocks are currently considered overfished. This is likely an underestimate. There probably are many more than a third, simply because so many of the world's fisheries are not well managed, are not well tracked and assessed. So this is kind of the area where many of the problems lie, because there isn't that adequate oversight and enforcement. As the world's population continues to grow, fish are becoming an increasingly more important part of our diet. In 2018, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations estimated that 20.3 kilograms of seafood were being consumed per person per year. That is an absolutely staggering figure. And for us in the US and Canada, it seems almost unimaginable that that's how much fish we're eating, because our diets still tend to be far more heavily skewed towards land-based protein, beef, pork, chicken. But over time, that trend is also changing, and people are looking for leaner forms of protein where they have the option of selecting their protein sources. So that 20.3 kilograms of fish per person per year is very likely going to increase. What is also changing is people's palates, their openness to experimenting with new textures, with new flavors. So that is continuing to open up this global trade on seafood. And what our traditional sort of preference for fish in the US and Canada, which is sort of white, flaky, flavorless fish, is beginning to change and open up to more flavorful forms of fish, to oilier forms of fish. So that will just continue to increase pressure on the world's wild fisheries. And of course, where there's demand, supply will step up if possible. So fishing fleets are continuing to fish into deeper and deeper reaches of the ocean, into farther and farther places to provide the supply, because the demand is there. But why does all this matter? So it matters a lot. Overfishing, like everything else on this planet, does not exist in a vacuum. Everything is interconnected, everything is interrelated. The pressures that we put on one part of the planet's ecosystem has ripple effects everywhere else around the world. Let's just think about COVID, for example. That has shone such a bright spotlight on the fact that everything is interconnected. The air we breathe, what we share, what we touch, what happens in one part of the world inevitably impacts what happens in the rest of the world. Nothing exists in a vacuum. So overfishing produces a myriad of cascading effects, anything from habitat destruction to significant bycatch, to the catch of, let's say, marine mammals, turtles, seabirds, dolphins, all kinds of unintended species, habitat, bycatch, labor issues, biodiversity loss, so on and so on and so on. The scenario is quite dark. And how much fish is coming out of the sea? Well, for that same reason that in those far-reaching places where there isn't any oversight necessarily, we don't know exactly, but the best estimate, and this is a infographic that was pulled together by the Pew Charitable Trust, was that in 2018, 109 million metric tons of fish were coming out of the ocean every single year, and up to a third of that catch was in these IUU fisheries, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries. That means there's no management, no oversight, no enforcement. And this is to the tune, the weight, the combined weight of the fish coming out of the ocean in those illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries is equal to the weight of the entire population of the United States. That's a lot of fish that nobody is really tracking or monitoring. And this is where the majority of the problems lie. And this is exactly what OceanWise works towards tackling every single day through our program. In fact, that is exactly why we exist. That unregulated, unreported, and illegal fishing is something that we absolutely cannot support. So how did we get to this place? How did we get here? Well, people have been fishing since people have walked the earth. Fishing has been small scale, sustainable, local for millennia. And the records show that well over 3,000 years ago, aquaculture, so fish farming in the form of small scale, vegetarian fish, locally produced fish, was occurring well over 3,000 years ago. Where this all began to change is approximately around the 1950s, when there were a lot of sort of revolutions in the fishing fleet, in industrial fishing processes. So where fishing boats used to really just travel closely to the shore, bring home smaller catches, all of a sudden, these boats, as they began expanding in scale and technical advancements, could go far further offshore. They could fish in far deeper waters. They could stay out much longer, and global trade began opening up. So the fish that was available, the volume of fish that was available, really started to rapidly escalate. And these two boats on the right-hand side provide sort of stark contrast of the change that has occurred in a approximately 50, 60-year period. Boats used to just go out sort of for day trips and come back to shore. In 2018, this super trawler on the bottom right headed out on its maiden voyage out of Germany, and this boat can stay out at sea for many, many weeks, if not months at a time. It has deep freezers, processing facilities on board, you know, huge areas for the crew to stay on board. Sometimes these super trawlers actually connect with motherships, where they capture the fish, process it, freeze it, and then they take it to another ship, dump off their catch. That mothership heads back to shore, but these trawlers stay out at sea. So they could actually stay out for months at a time if need be. And this is, it's fascinating, it's dark at times, but please do not despair. Hope exists. And that's why we're doing the work that we do. And this is why I'm hopeful. There is a global call to turn the tide in a very short time period. There's an urgency that is shared by international governments, by stakeholders around the world. And that deadline, that timeline by when significant positive change needs to begin happening, and we need to start seeing shifts in the current state of affairs, is 2030. So actually, at this point in time, it's 8.5 years away. Are we up for the challenge? Of course we are. I work best when there is a deadline, when there is a line drawn in the sand, and lots of people are getting really motivated around the 2030 date. And I'll tell you why. Some of the world's top scientists, including those that work in the UN, including those that have pulled together the IPCC report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, their report shows that large-scale solutions, aggressive solutions, ambitious solutions need to be put in place and actioned upon by this date to ensure that our climate, biodiversity, jobs, and food, enough food to feed the growing population of the planet is secured. And people are getting on board. So a framework that most international organizations, corporations, government bodies have agreed to are these. These are the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations Development Program. They're also known as the Global Goals. So these 17 goals very succinctly lay out the 17 areas of work that are required to ensure that there is an end to poverty, that the planet is protected, that all people are able to enjoy peace and prosperity, again, by that date, 2030. So when we look at this list of goals, it's very, very clear, very obvious where overfishing squarely lands, and that's under SDG, Sustainable Development Goal 14, Life Below Water. But when we start thinking a little bit more broadly about the impacts that overfishing has, it becomes clear that many of these other goals are also extremely applicable. Number 1, no poverty. Number 2, zero hunger. Number 8, decent work and economic growth. And of course, number 13, climate action. Now, OceanWise as well has a 2030 deadline to ensure that significant change is beginning to occur within these next, and demonstrated within these next 8.5 years. We are committed to engaging broad audiences, to changing people's hearts and minds, to creating that long-lasting, positive change that is absolutely necessary to ensure that our oceans can thrive into the future. So it really is an all hands on deck scenario. Step 1 is an admission that no individual, no organization, no government body can achieve these goals on their own. We need to enter into a space of deep collaboration, agreeing on common visions, and then activating experts in various fields to move together towards this collective vision of the world that we have. We need legislators, we need businesses, we need consumers, media, donors, foundations, the NGO community, stakeholders, youth, adults, elders, everybody in between as well. We need them to come together to start creating this change. And this is how progress begins to happen. This lovely group of people gathered here on the left-hand side is an alliance of which OceanWise is an active member, and I had the pleasure of traveling down to Monterey Bay in 2019 to meet up with colleagues from Australia and Brazil and Costa Rica, Japan, China, Netherlands, South Africa, so many other locations. We are all ratings system. We all hold and promote rating systems in our various geographies. So our logos might appear different in the marketplace. You might see a different, logo on a product or on a menu. But what we all agree on is this shared vision and a shared standard of what sustainability means to all of us. So globally, there is this agreement amongst these groups. And the communications are really consistent in various geographies around the world. In terms of Oceanwise, specifically, what, how do we define sustainability and what are we working towards? Well, our seafood program has been in existence for 16 years now. We come at it at present from an ecological perspective. So we need to ensure sort of three key criteria: that there are healthy populations that are resilient to fishing pressures, that we have effective and adaptive management in place, and that there are limited negative impacts on habitats and other species. Those are essential criteria that help inform us as to whether or not a certain species or fish offering is sustainable or not sustainable. We know that we can do better and we want to do better. We are committed over the next several years to really begin building this global gold standard for sustainable seafood, one that incorporates a high standard for labor practices, one that minimizes carbon footprint, and one that minimizes ghost gear. And that's derelict fishing gear that's thrown off of fishing vessels or just breaks off during storms. It's a significant contributor to microplastics in the oceans, as well as all kinds of entanglements with marine life. So these three new categories are places where there are various experts, individuals, and organizations around the world already working on tackling these issues. We are committed to moving forward in deep collaboration with those experts, incorporating that, bringing that into the fold of our sustainable seafood program to ensure that all of these key pieces are addressed when someone says, my seafood is sustainable. At present, Oceanwise works throughout the entire seafood supply chain, starting with the producer. So that's a primary fisherman, let's say, working with suppliers, distributors, chefs, restaurants, retailers, that's grocery stores, restaurants, and of course, the end consumer. We've been in business doing this work for over 16 years with lots of lessons learned. Currently, we're enjoying partnerships with businesses in over 3,000 unique locations in 12 countries around the world. And it is a wonderful space to operate in. There are so many choices, so many alternatives to unsustainable species. And the absolute key pieces are knowing what species you're purchasing or eating, where that species is coming from, and how it was either caught or farmed. So that's the work that we do. We provide a lot of expert advice to our business partners. We help them source those alternatives. We create market connections for them. So if someone's looking for a particular sustainable seafood product, say it's a retailer or a restaurant, we can connect them to a supplier that's carrying that product to ensure that everyone is able to promote and sell sustainable seafood as much as absolutely possible. We also spend a great deal of time educating both our business partners and their staff so that everyone knows where the resources lie, why certain recommendations come out the way that they do, and that everyone is creating this incremental, year-over-year continuous improvement in their purchasing practices. Businesses, just like consumers, are an absolute key part of the solution. We will get to a place again where we will be able to hold in-person events and activations. So we have traditionally spent a great amount of time supporting both our business partners as well as pulling off our own events. Deep engagement, just that intimate experience of eating something that's sustainable, experimenting with new types of seafood is just such a wonderful way to kind of open up people's minds to the issues at hand, as well as to the solutions that are at their fingertips. We work with various ambassadors and real leaders in the field. Bottom right is our wonderful co-founder, Chef Robert Clark, who also very recently received the Order of Canada, one of Canada's highest civilian honors, for establishing a sustainable seafood program that has created significant impact in this country and beyond. We recognize our business partners for the excellent work that they conduct, and we also produce a lot of content, including cookbooks. The top right is our most recent cookbook. It's a digital product, so you can buy that online. It does focus on restorative species, those superstars of the ocean. So kelp, bivalves, including oysters, clams, mussels, those that actually filter and clean the water in which they exist. These are highly, highly recommended Oceanwise products. Right now, we're at the very beginning of a 2-month awareness, education, and engagement mini campaign, we're calling it, on overfishing. So we have 8 weeks to really engage our audiences, encourage them to take action, and encourage them to amplify, to fundraise for us, and just to get deeper involved in this conversation around overfishing. We have 2-week segments broken out into issues and solutions, which is what we're doing today. Then we'll spend some time tackling wild capture seafood, farmed seafood, and then in the end, working towards those real action-oriented solutions. What can you do? Both for business partners as well as for individual consumers. This is the pledge that Lasse was referring to. We would love all of you to jump on board, to fill out this pledge, to sort of publicly state or state for yourselves how you will participate and show your commitment to supporting sustainable seafood. This is a wonderful way to sort of be an armchair activist, but then take your commitments into the real world. You can support us by only choosing Oceanwise recommended seafood. You can donate to the program. You can follow us on social media. You can amplify. You can download the cookbook. And any which way that you would like to take action, we would love to see you show up here. So please do take a little bit of time and fill this out. This can be found at seafood.ocean.org, and it's the Waves of Change campaign, and we can follow up with that link. And thank you in advance for signing up for the pledge. What we also encourage you to do is to follow us on a really, really exciting journey. We're just dipping our toes into this space right now. This is something that I'm particularly enthusiastic about. We are co-creating with our partners in the Arctic through our Arctic program and our Carvic program, a new way of addressing and assessing small-scale fisheries. Now, small-scale fisheries make up approximately 50% of the entire global catch of wild fish, but they are really widely distributed. There's not really a centralized way for these small-scale communities and individuals to operate in sort of a larger economic system. Because there aren't really distribution networks set up, processing facilities, really basic things like enough ice so that the fish can stay cool for longer and then get shared more widely. A lot of the time, these small-scale fisheries and fisher people in the fisheries don't receive the full benefit of what is possible in terms of selling their product more widely. So we are working with our partners in the North to incorporate Indigenous, local, and traditional forms of knowledge into our standard assessment system so that we can say, and it's very, very likely the case that these are some of the most sustainable fisheries in the world. They just haven't been assessed through our system before, that they are sustainable. Give them that mark of recognition and then allow for those fisheries and those products to be sold on equal footing. Let's level the playing field and bring that to the broader market. We feel that this system will be sort of infinitely replicable and scalable, both in Canada and then around the world, once we figure out how to do it well with our partners in the North. And with that, I would just like to reiterate, of course, nature is incredibly resilient. And given the opportunity, we know that nature can and does rebound and flourish, but we must intervene at this point in time. We cannot sit back and allow destructive, short-sighted practices like overfishing to negatively impact the planet, species, habitats, and ultimately ourselves. We cannot allow for further biodiversity loss. We must ensure that the oceans are able to continue helping us fight climate change. The oceans must be able to continue to feed us and the growing population, and again, ensure that there is work available and can be supported through these fisheries for tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people around the globe. So with your help, with your actions, with your passion and inspiration, we can absolutely begin to create these waves of change. Thank you so much again for spending this time with us today. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and we can dive right into the questions and answers. My colleague, Isabella, who is very graciously helping us host this session today, to maybe read out some of the questions that have come in through the Q&A box.
Hi, Sofika, for sure. We got a couple questions and a couple comments. Let me just try and filter through here to get you some. One question, this is from Cindy. Cindy is wondering, are there any international laws that large-scale trawlers or international corporations need to follow? So if a trawler is staying out at sea for months at a time and offloading to a mothership, are they legally allowed to do that, or is that considered to be part of IUU fishing practices?
Excellent question. Very complicated scenario. If there was one global body that oversaw the entire fishing, all the fishing fleets on the planet, then yes, everyone would have to adhere to a standard set of rules, regulations. There could be enforcement in place, but the reality is it's such a fractured landscape, different overlapping jurisdictions, different overlapping areas and government bodies. So there are a lot of gray areas. And unfortunately, that's where fishing fleets are figuring out how do they sort of slip through the system and turn the scenario into something that's beneficial to them, even if their practices are sort of substandard. So I wish that I could answer that very clearly and say absolutely, but unfortunately, that's just not the reality in many areas of the ocean at present.
Perfect. All right, there's a couple other questions in here. Oh, someone's asking why we got rid of the Oceanwise Seafood app from several years ago. If you want, I can take that one, Sofika.
Sure, Isabella. I know that you had firsthand experience with that, so please go ahead.
Yes, Riley, I was also a big fan of the app. But the good thing is we got rid of the app because our website is perfectly functional to use on a phone. So the idea being you can just go to our website to not only gain access to information on our recommendations, but also gain access to additional information. Like we have different aqua blogs on there and different regarding different content. We also have videos and recipes. So there's a lot more information available on our website than on the app. So that is why we had to let that one go. And we have a really excellent question from Peter. He's wondering, Sofika, if you can share a particular species of growing concern, as well as one that has improved over time.
So the amazing thing is what I mentioned at the very end. Nature will rebound if it's given the opportunity to do so. And right now, the opportunities exist in places where fisheries are well managed. So there are sort of precautionary measures put in place, and then usually a relenting of fishing pressure for a while to allow the fisheries to begin to flourish again. In the United States, so NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, actually publishes a quarterly list of fisheries that were overfished. And then every quarter, as they're monitored over time, you can track and see which fisheries are beginning to rebound and become healthier. So that's a great place to look to see sort of the current status of what's happening in the US. Fisheries are extremely dynamic. There are so many factors that influence the health of a particular fishery, and it's not always directly related to fishing pressures. Warming waters could be one reason. Currents, specific cycles within populations. So it's extremely dynamic. There are lots of examples actually in places like Central America, in Mexico, in Turkey, where fisheries have rebounded. A lot of the time it's actually associated with marine protected areas being put in place. So those really critical nurseries and habitats that are necessary for fisheries to or for fish in the early stages of their life cycle to be protected and to grow to a certain size, those areas are protected. And then when the particular fish grows to a certain size and decides to kind of wander out of that protected area, then they can be fished depending on the regulations in that region. But protected areas, I think, are absolutely key, and creating sort of a network or a chain of marine protected areas is one really smart way to ensure that fish populations sort of stabilize and also begin to rebound.
I did have another really excellent question come in from Leah, and she is wondering, how should we approach teaching people how the world is interconnected? This is a nice meaty one, especially since people tend to be more central focused, and it can be hard for them to understand systemic thinking.
Boy, that is a phenomenal question. Education, dissemination of information, that is so key to kind of engaging people's minds on the issue, getting them emotionally connected to issues. I think starting in the school system is a fantastic way to kind of get that new generation of stewards of the planet really excited about conservation and protection. But this really has to come from all levels. It has to come from governments. It has to be motivated by industry action, by the NGO community, individuals. Every single one of you on the call today has the power to speak about these issues to your friends, to your families. You are a trusted source of information. So no action, no conversation is too small to light a light bulb off in someone's head and be like, okay, there's something else that I need to be aware of. There are actionable solutions that I can take every single day, and it begins to create this ripple effect. So I would say, ask the tough questions, hold conversations, educate yourself, amplify, engaging content and information. Everything adds up to sort of the bigger solution.
Definitely does. Every little bit helps. Another question here coming from Larissa. You mentioned collaboration. What are some of the collaborative efforts you're doing, either with Oceanwise and sustainable fishing, to help achieve your goals?
Fantastic question.
Mhm.
We cannot exist without collaboration. And as I mentioned, deep collaboration in everything that we do. We're a small team. Oceanwise is, a small organization in the grand scheme of things. Where does collaboration, small but mighty. So collaboration begins on the team. Aligned vision, aligned goals, shared sense of purpose and urgency. Then, sort of the next concentric circle is within our own organization, that our colleagues are educated, our colleagues feel that they have solutions at their fingertips and they can take that out into their networks. we definitely collaborate with a few key alliances. So that Global Seafood Ratings Alliance, the group of 14 NGOs around the world that all offer ratings systems and programs in various geographies around the world. That's a fantastic forum. There's another one that has recently swelled to over 90 member groups globally, and that is the Conservation Alliance for Seafood Solutions, which incorporates not only the nonprofit world, not only aquariums and ratings and certification systems, but also industry actors. So that really dynamic forum allows for sort of reality checks in the marketplace of what's going on, for scientists to sort of educate and guide conversations and these ratings and certification programs, and for us to sort of collectively come out with a shared voice, a shared opinion, shared messaging to all of our various networks. So collaboration is essential to making progress on this issue.
Definitely. And I think we have time for one more question. So, Fika, you kind of briefly touched upon this before, but I think it's a great question to ask. And hopefully, the answer is something that everyone here can take away with them. So, this is from Matt. And he says, what are some of the things that have worked for Sofika for helping friends and family members understand why they should be more ocean conscious?
Oh boy, yeah. So I like to talk. I like to engage people. I like to share my wisdom with my networks at the dinner table, in calls with my family. It's really, leading by example, being true to my own personal commitment to sort of doing the right things, educating myself. Um, I love seafood. I love, high quality, sustainable seafood. I tend to not eat that much of it, to be honest with you, because I eat very little animal protein. But when I do choose to eat it, I look at it as a wonderful sort of gift. It's the last wild um, species really that we're harvesting. Everything else really is farmed unless you're a hunter or a trapper. This is really something special that should be honored. We should enjoy every piece of every fish and seafood that we eat. We should, not waste anything that we can. So it really is about just being, open and sort of asking people why they're doing certain things, always kind of educating yourself, and just keeping the conversation going.
Fantastic. Well, we are approaching the 1 hour mark. So just want to quickly thank everyone for attending, for asking such engaging and excellent questions, and for taking some time out of World Oceans Day to educate yourselves a little bit on why it's important that we care for the oceans.